Welcome to unDUBBED, the podcast that's unscripted, uncensored, and undeniably data. I'm Fee.
And I'm Sarah. And today we're kicking off something special for the data fam.
That's right. It's our IronViz feeder series. We're chatting with some of the most incredible creators who have poured their heart, soul, and so many hours into their IronViz entries this year. And if you're tuning in on Apple or on Spotify and just listening, we recommend that you tune into a version where you can actually watch along, because they're going to be demonstrating their own visualizations that they stepped in. So that's on Spotify video or YouTube video.
That's right. They're not on the big stage just yet, but they're throwing their hats into the ring and hoping to make it to the finals in the US next May.
In this two-part series, you'll hear what really goes down into an IronViz submission, the spark of the idea, the creative chaos and the self-doubt, the breakthroughs, and a few secrets from those who have been there before and even made the stage.
If you've ever wondered what it takes to stand out in IronViz, or you just love hearing how data stories come to life, you are in the right place.
So settle in, hit follow, and share this with anyone who's got their sights set on IronViz glory or just loves to deliver great visualizations for their jobs.
This is unDUBBED, brought to you by DubDub Data.
And welcome, Kevin Wee, to our amazing IronViz special. Thank you so much for joining us today. You're a 2-times visionary and, of course, a Tableau ambassador as well. And if anyone is part of the data fam, they would know you for your beautiful design. And when I saw your IronViz submission, I knew that I had to get you on the potty, onto unDUBBED today. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. Okay, Sarah, why don't you kick off with our first question for Kevin?
Yeah, so first of all, I love your visualization. It takes me back to Singapore a little bit with the food that has inspired this. I'd like you to talk us through the storytelling and design aspect of your submission.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to say that as a Chinese Malaysian, well, I'm glad that you have visited Singapore. Both Singapore and Malaysia, we have good food. And I think because there's so many Chinese people in these two countries, we preserve our heritage very well. So we enjoy a lot of our traditional food, like what's showing today, which is the dim sum. So I'm going to share my screen now, and then I'm going to address your questions. So what you're seeing now on the screen, it's my IronViz qualifier submission entitled The Nutrition Values of Dim Sum. And this is actually an expansion version of the original Viz that I had a couple of years ago. So you can treat this as a sequel of that Viz of the day. These visualizations, I explore different dishes that's commonly found in a dim sum restaurant. If you go to the thumbnail here, you can see that you can hover over a different dish. It will tell you what it is. We have the steamed pork dumpling. We have things like the prawn dumpling, hagao. We have things about the tea. You can learn a little bit about the tea, a little bit about the sauce as well. So kind of give you an experience of what it's like to eat, to dine in a dim sum restaurant. And when you scroll down a little bit, it will tell you, basically, this is the table of content, right? Telling you each chapter, what you shall expect from them. And then we're going to jump into the body of content. And we start by the nutrition value of these 76 commonly found dishes. You may filter them by each dish category. After that, we would come into a part where we call a case study. This is a case study where I'm just going to assume that it's very hard to analyze 76 dishes. So I'm going to tell you that let's pretend that I brought 2 of my friends and then we go and enjoy only 12 of them. Let's see how well we're doing in terms of nutrition, energy sources, and what kind of ingredient we have ingested. And use that as a case study to explore the nutrition value of my cuisine. After that, the second chapter would be exploring the energy sources. We know that human body take proteins, carbohydrates, and fat as our energy source. And a healthy balance of diet, it's not, 1/3 of each, but basically more on the fat and carb side and less on the protein side. I didn't know that until I did a study. And then I was just exploring. These are of the 76 dishes, and these are the dish category. And if you scroll down a little bit, in the case study part, these are the 12 dishes that I selected. So I only study this. I don't care about all of them. No one's going to eat all 76 dishes in one go. And if you did, it's not about nutrition that you should care about, right? So after that, the third part of my viz would be to explore what kind of ingredients were used to make each of the dishes. You can study all of them in combine, or you can go to each of the dish to explore that specific item. I'm a Chinese. I know that a lot of people that read my visualization, chances are they would be more familiar with the Chinese name of these dishes. Therefore, we also have a filter with the Chinese name for the locals. And just to give people a sense of what's made of, what these dishes are made of. After that, again, we dive back into the case study and study what ingredients have been used to make that 12 dishes. And then I, as a person that ate this, I just want to know that which of these is contributed to the, let's say, the higher content of fat, the higher content of sugar, higher content on cholesterol, so to speak. So after all of this troubleshooting, right, analyzing things, we talk about the what part, like what's the nutrition value? And then we talk about the so what part, right? Like with this nutrition value, how well they're generating energy. Now we're talking about this now what. The now what part is like, now can we make a little bit of a difference in our choices to make my dining experience more healthy? So I came up with 4 different ways to make the dining of dim sum dishes more enjoyable and healthy, including, call a friend or call multiple friends to join you to share the calories. Or you can just straight out order less item, just don't order that much. You can actually toggle this, like click on every item that you may want to order, you can cancel it. And you can see how the nutrition value dropped. You can also choose a healthier alternatives. For example, here, the top item, it's the original item. The bottom item in every group, that is the healthier versions of it. So basically, if you select a healthier version, you should have a healthier outcome when it comes to nutrition value. Yep. Or you know what? You can just enjoy everything and then just run it off later. You can exercise later, right? Sometimes we don't want to change anything. We're just going to suffer later. So
that will be me. That will be me.
That's not me.
Like, we're safe. We can just order all of this and then we can all enjoy the run 2 hours later. So basically, you can enter your body weight, and then it will tell you if you choose different common size, how many hours it will take you to run off the energy and the carbs. Basically, you can see that this is the the well-hated pie chart, but I disguise it as I call it a time pie. Each time pie, it's 10 minutes. So a full circle will be 60 minutes.
It reminds me of a cyclist wheel.
Yeah, it does, right? It does, right? Especially when there's only 2 of them, and it happens to be in the bicycling row. So, hey, that's it's what's meant to be. So I ended everything with a close statements, and then of course with the credits to most of the resources that I've been pulled off to make this visualization. So this is like a very big ideas of what this visualization is like. I'm just going to quickly talk about a couple of key design components that I have implemented in this visualization. Number 1 is golden ratio. So when you open your screen, most people's screen, the width and the height ratio is pretty close to golden ratio. So when I designed this visualization, I want every time when you slide that frame, golden rectangle frame, there's something important and visually stunning to see. So at first, you're wowed by the thumbnail, right? And then after the thumbnail, the second you scroll down, you have something with interesting shapes. And then you scroll again. All of the key informations, they can be fit within the golden rectangle. And then there's always something more at the bottom to prompt you to scroll more. So this is a little bit of a tactic that I use to keep people scrolling. The second thing that I like to say is that I use an idea that I leverage from graphic design and like journal layout. That is something that we call a modular grid. For people that are not familiar with it, modular grid is just a grid of writing columns and rows with gaps in between the columns and rows and margins surrounding it. I use it as a way to align the text and align the visual component. That's why I consider all of my text. I believe this is a 12 column grids. So it's all of the text is almost 1/3 of the grid. So everything looks super aligned. The last thing I like to say is typography. Basically, every same kind of information, they look the same throughout the visualization. The body text always look the same. I believe I was using Salesforce Sans, about 12 points. And then, of course, within Tableau, we're using Tableau Sans. So yeah, so just to give 3 examples of the design tactics that I've used. And in terms of storytellings, as I've said earlier, I knew that 76 dishes is extremely overwhelming for everybody. That's why in terms of storytelling, I narrow it down to 12 items. And then we're just going to play, we're just going to play pretend that we ate these 12 things and then what would happen. I think this gave people a very good context into understand how nutrition works in terms of this kind of cuisine. So that's it. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. And thanks for walking us through that, because there's so much to go through. And it was really great to see the nuances and everything. And I love those graphic design techniques that you've employed, because it really does make you just want to keep going. And even here, where you've got the border around, but it's going to encourage you to keep flowing because the border doesn't finish in that golden rectangle that you spoke about. So I just love it. I've got a question to ask just around, like, there's a lot of data in here. Did you spend a lot of time in the data?
So I'm going to scroll down to the reference part real quick. So I'll say that most of the nutrition, you mean how much time I spent on looking for them or analyzing them?
I think even both, because I think that can be a bit of a roadblock for some people, is trying to think of where to start and how to get that data. And if you could talk a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I completely bump into the original set of the nutrition's values part of the data. So I came into the Hong Kong Central Food Safety website, and I found out that they already did a study. They basically analyzed that 76 dishes, and then they had a set of recommendations of how much you should eat, what you should avoid, and things like that. But the whole thing read very scientifically, right? It feels like you're reading a scientific papers, and no one's going to read this if this is a scientific visualization, right? I wouldn't say no one. I'll say that most people would be intimidated by that. So that's why I used the case study to make it approachable. The part that took me forever to figure out was the recipe part and the nutrition value of the recipe, because basically the recipe, everybody had a different versions of how to make things. So I had to go find the one that I deemed the most appropriate, and then I put the link in my spreadsheet. And the second thing is I had to go to the US Department of Agricultural website to find the nutrition value of each of these ingredients. Now I'm super familiar with what's the nutrition value of flour, carrot, scallion, soy sauce. Like, now I know where to find them. But that part took me forever. But going through all of this actually make me appreciate all of this informations that the FDA has been putting out there, or the equivalent of FDA in different part of the world. Like, these information is out there so that you can make an informed decisions in how healthy you want to eat. So make sure you take them in as well.
Thank you so much for walking through all of that. And what really shines through for me in your visualization is the connection with you and where you come from, and your connection with food as well, because to have that commitment to go and do all of that analysis and get all of that data and to put it in, but to really then present it in a way that makes us all want to run out and get dim sum like straight away. It means a lot. And your design aesthetic is like, it's like going to a great restaurant and having amazing dishes put out in front of you. The way that you approach data, not only in this visualization, but in all of the visualizations that I've seen of yours, it's just so thoughtful, and it's all of those minor touches. It's like people are going in with the the micro herbs and just layering those things on, because that's where it should go to be visually pleasing and really invite you into the dishes. So I'm just blown away by how beautiful this delivery is.
Well, thank you very much. It is, for the longest time, I didn't have much training in terms of arts and, traditional graphic design classes and everything. But I pick a lot of this up on the street, and a lot of examples on Tableau Public or other infographic designers using Adobe or other softwares. I think there's a lot of good learning resources out there. And when I designed this visualization, because I'm a Chinese Malaysian. My mother's side of the family, they came from Canton or Guangdong in the modern term. So I'm half Cantonese. So this is basically half side of my food. It's this. When I designed this visualization, I tried to make people appreciate my culture a little bit more without making it look too much like a Chinatown thing. Mm-hmm. Does it make sense to you? Like, I'm trying not to use the chopstick font, right? I'm trying not to use the, bright red. Everybody's going to expect bright red from me. I was like, no, let's try something else. So I went to the other side and used, dark green instead. But I'm glad that it's conveyed mood-wise and information-wise. And the point is for people to enjoy the food. I'm glad I did that part.
Your colors are outstanding. Like it's really interesting to see how you've layered on. And I felt that it was, there was a lot of green up the top, but then as we came down into the petals of the ingredients that were coming through, I think it really blended so well. Like there's not many people that understand color theory, but I feel like you've got a great understanding about that flow and how to introduce it into your visualization.
Yeah, I'm glad. In terms of color, I just want to give a tip to your audience. There's a plugin on Google that's called Color Blindly. Basically, it's a good color blindness simulator. So can you see the color change, or am I the only one seeing it? Yeah, so by clicking this, you can immediately see whether your visualization is working or not.
Amazing.
Yeah, so yeah.
So nice. So Kevin, I was going to say you're pretty much confessing you're self-taught in terms of graphic design, but you obviously have a real eye for it. One last question before we go. Approximately how much time do you think you spent on this visualization?
Well, the thing is, when they first hinted about we may have food, I already start rereading the PDF file of the original data set. But I didn't have the data set for ingredients. I didn't have the data set for recipe. I didn't have the data set for nutrition value of the ingredients. So all of those parts took, I think I only started putting things together 2 weeks in. So it means that I must have taken 2 to 3 weeks just to deal with the data. And then the last 3 days of the contest, I actually took pay time off. And I look at my balance, was like, okay, I still have a couple of days to go. And then I don't have family here, so there's no point for me to celebrate Thanksgiving. So, I did the math. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take 3 days off and just to go through with this. So yeah, it took some time, but I have to say I also went out and enjoyed Halloween party, drinkings with my friends, eating with my friends. So I didn't lose a life for the contest. So I just want to put it out there. But nonetheless, I have to say that I do know that a lot of parents, a lot of couples, caretakers in the families, students, they have other responsibility. I've been fortunate in that way that I don't have a cat, I don't have a dog, I don't have other obligations in my life other than my job. So that rhymes too. So it's a little bit easier for me that way.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and we'll pass over to the next datafam member.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Next up, we're meeting Heather Cox. Heather is a second-time Tableau ambassador. We've all got the shirts to prove it. Very exciting. And she leads the Adelaide Tug. Welcome, Heather.
Thanks for having me. Very exciting.
Heather, we're so excited to have you on our IronViz special today. You know, I know how excited you were to get started, and we're waiting for that data topic to actually drop. So we'd love to learn more today about your IronViz submission and how do you make a story about something super technical relatable?
Yeah, as you say, I was really hanging out for the announcement of the theme, and
were
so
you happy with it when it
well,
came out?
When we got the full theme, yes. When the first sort of teasers came out and we're talking about food, I may have gone on a little bit of a rant. It's not a big topic for me. I'm not very motivated by food, and so I went on a bit of a rant about how the heck was I supposed to do this. And Alex came back and said, "You did it 2 weeks ago." Because I'd done the Wisdom of Crowds viz on the lollipops, guessing the number of lollipops in the jar. I'm like, oh yeah, whoops. So I was coming up with all kinds of ideas about how I could sort of do food, and then they dropped the real theme, food and drink, and I went, that's right. I've had this idea for ages about putting together all the details of like the mocktail recipes, like the non-alcoholic cocktails. And I had wanted to optimize it so that I could kind of figure out how could I buy the least number of ingredients so I had the least amount of wastage and be able to make the most, different varieties and things like that. And so I'd sort of started, hand coding some JSON just to try and get things together. But I had not had the kick up the butt to actually finish it off or really, really get into it. And so when the theme turned out to be food and drink, I went, okay, yeah, this is my chance. This is my kick up the butt. And so obviously there was going to be a lot of technical stuff in there, being able to, create like a shopping list and like tick things off and say what you already had in the pantry so you could figure out what ingredients you already had. So what were the new ingredients you needed to have in order to make, this or that or whatever. And that was really highly technical. And then I went, wait, IronViz, you've got the analysis part and the design part. Where's the story in this? And I thought, this is really hard. So I sat down with ChatGPT and went, okay, this is what I want to do. But obviously IronViz, we're talking about a story. The reason I want to do this is all of these reasons why I was looking at mocktails and all of these things, because it's so difficult to, find something to drink when you go out if you're not drinking alcohol. What's the, if you don't want to be drinking juice with the kids, what do you do? How do you get around this? And so the mocktails are sort of where I'd gone with this line of thinking, and ChatGPT just went, "You idiot, that's the story." Like, I kind of realized as I was writing it, but it really just hit it home, and then started talking about, sort of how to refine that. And so that's where I ended up with my big theme.
I'm thinking this could be really useful in bars as well.
Well, I mean, hopefully, but I think the big idea that we came down to was around like what happens at home, like sharing when you're having guests around, because that's where we can really, control the environment. So yeah, this line sort of came to me only to be sociable as I was sort of working through things. I was doing a lot of sort of sketching things out in OneNote, and it was something that my dad has said. Since I was tiny, people would ask him if he wanted a beer, and he'd say, "Oh, only to be sociable." And it was a big joke, and we all laughed. And dads have these jokes that they just use. But yeah, it sort of struck home while I was working on this, going, "Hey, this is it. This is the key. This is the theme to it. Do you belong if you're not drinking? And how does that affect everything about that part of our lives, that social part of our lives?" Because as I sort of went into it, there's a very small percentage of the population that, particularly in Australia, and New Zealand's not a lot different, that are not drinkers. most people are drinking regularly. What happens? What happens when you go out and there's only 5% of the menu that will cater to non-drinkers? And then what happens when you have to have, when you're sharing around and your drink costs a lot less than everyone else? Everyone gets really awkward over that. It's not, so suddenly it makes it a bit more difficult to belong. But when you're at home, you're able to control that a bit more. So what can you do? And it turns out that in Australia, the week before Christmas, searches for mocktails just hits the high every single year like clockwork. People are thinking about it. So how can we make that easier? Well, yeah, this is where we've created this mocktail mixer, which allows you to sort of either browse through the mocktails, select your ingredients, and then have that recommend mocktails for you that you already have ingredients for or that you're only one or two away from. And my fabulous random recipe, which is I'm really pleased about that one because you can just keep clicking it and it keeps giving you random. And if you've ever tried to do random in Tableau, you'll understand why that's difficult. But I also did this, and I'm waiting to be excommunicated from the Tableau community for this one. I created an export to CSV button in my IronViz entry.
Is that worse than an export to Excel? I think no.
Well, no, but it's it was going to be an export to Excel, but I found a nice way to do it to CSV that was really clean. But yeah, you can you create this shopping list as you're browsing through, and then you can export it to CSV. So I'm hoping that yes, everybody will understand that it's about the functionality, and forgive me.
You're forgiven, because do you know what? I really love this take on mocktails, and it hits home quite closely because there's a lot of people that are close to me that choose not to drink, or that also, that may only have one or two occasional drinks. And it's something where they feel often excluded or even looked down on. And, and I think it's because having a drink is socially acceptable and normalized, and has been for so long, that people feel like, oh, you'll judge me if you're not drinking, and therefore that's where the tension arises from. So I really love that you've come up with this really creative way. Great time of year to do it as well. And the design that you have with, just the simple colors that you've selected, it's really, really beautiful.
Thank you. I've been really surprised, I guess, by the impact that it's had on people, as you say, who are either non-drinkers or are close to people who are not drinking for whatever reason. Because, yeah, there is sort of a sense that if you're not drinking, other people feel the right to know why.
Yes.
And those reasons can be very personal. And so it was something I didn't want to get too far into, as to what are the reasons that you choose not to drink, because it is a personal decision, and I don't want to rank them. It's if it's important to somebody, then it's important to someone. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks of that. Plus, we're also going to get data on that.
This is true. Just back on the design, I think it's quite an Art Deco looking visualization, and I was wondering if it was a bit of a nod to Prohibition, maybe.
Oh. There was a little bit of that. I think the martini glass sort of occurred to me at one point, and the little legend in the olives. Yeah, okay, I've got an idea here, but then the color scheme, how am I going to do the color scheme? How am I going to do the color scheme? And was playing around with a few different ideas, and then the Art Deco thing. I can't remember where it came from, but just it hit, and then just blew everything else out of the water. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, there's all these little things that work with it. So the sort of the nod to Prohibition, and the the idea of the very swanky cocktail bars and things like that. It's got a very sort of Art Deco vibe about it. And then, when I started coming up with like the indexes, I'm like, in my head, it's a Rolodex. And, because it's got that sort of fan kind of shape about it. And, it was probably invented in the 20s as well. So I've got like this whole thing in my head where it'll sort of, just dovetails together really nicely. It's, but yeah, it was just one of those things that kind of comes out of the blue and you're like, yep, there is no other solution to this. This is how it has to be.
And one other thing that strikes me about this and sort of the area that you've developed in, which I think lends to helping people with data. Recently, you've also won an award for Women in Innovation in South Australia for the data work you did on your Vyvanse locator work. I know that we're talking a little bit about IronViz at the moment, but is there something about what you do in your spare time with visualization that really lends to trying to help people with data?
I think I see problems and I want to solve them. Mm-hmm. And I'm not so sure that I'm interested in helping people as I am in solving the problem. Mm-hmm. Helping the people is kind of a happy side effect. It's one of those things that I see this problem. It's like, why hasn't anyone else solved it yet? So let's jump in and sort something else out so that we can, there's something to help these people. Yeah, it's the problem. I like just jumping in and being really tenacious with that problem. I mean, like's probably the wrong word. It's probably an inability to not.
A drive, a passion to
there
solve.
You go. That's a great word.
And you said some of your friends, family, and colleagues have started using this visualization. What are some of the interesting outcomes you've seen from that?
I've certainly heard a lot of. I've never known so much about the glasses. This is really interesting. I'm learning a lot while I'm going through it. I personally used it to fill my shopping list the other night so that I could grab a couple of extra ingredients. So finding that it's actually useful out in the wild, which is great. So far I haven't heard anybody saying that they've actually made anything off of it yet, but yes, we'll see.
Challenge accepted.
Exactly. With summer coming, lots more entertaining going on in the Southern Hemisphere. So definitely a time to try some mocktails.
That's it. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm assuming, Thanksgiving in the Northern Hemisphere, Christmas, all those kinds of things, they'll have some stuff to celebrate.
For sure. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been really great catching up and learning more about your story and your visualization as well. And we're looking forward to the next datafam member to come on. We'll catch you soon.
Thanks, Heather.
All right, so we have our next datafam member. We've got Anne Pregler, and she is here to share with us some amazing insights into her IronViz submission. Anne is a 2 times Tableau ambassador, and she's also won 2 Viz of the Days as well. So I'm super excited to hear her insights today.
Welcome, Anne.
Hello, great to be here.
Thanks for coming. Amazing.
Now, Anne, the art of telling a good story is sometimes knowing what to keep in and what to keep out. So when it came to your IronViz submission, what are some of the things that you did to make sure it was a cohesive story at the end?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to share my screen and just take a look at what we're talking about here. My viz this year is very long. This is actually very par for the course for me. My viz last year was long as well, but this is the full 10,000 pixel vertical limit that Tableau has. There's a lot here. But it might surprise you to hear that my initial plan for this, everything I have here was going to be one of 3 sections. I was going to explore 2 totally different things and bring them all together. And what I found was, as I was narrowing in on what was actually going to make a good story with good analysis and really keep attention and keep things interesting, I had to let a lot of stuff So I threw out 2 entire sections. There was a whole section here. My viz is about food on the way to Mars, but I had a whole section about, well, what about food when you get to Mars? What if you want to stay there for 10 years? How do you do food for that? That was going to be a whole totally different topic. And there just wasn't space and wasn't time to keep the story I wanted to tell with those elements. So my first takeaway and lesson I really learned this year was narrowing in on really small aspects to make it interesting. The other thing that I really had to do here was let go of a lot of stuff that I really loved. So I'll show you a quick example here. Early on in my viz, I've got this very quick line that just says, it's 9 months to Mars. Astronauts will spend a year on the planet waiting to return. Some food and supplies will be dropped off earlier. And really, like, this whole thing with the timeline of the trip to Mars is really interesting because it's all about orbital mechanics and when you can launch and how you can get there, the shortest route, and when the planets align. And it's really fascinating. And I had this very cool like arc diagram that was demonstrating that, how the pieces were going to come together. And what I realized was that while that was super interesting, it didn't really have anything to do with the food and plants growing on the voyage, which is what my whole viz is about. And so I had to let it go, replace it with just this single sentence, but then spend some more time digging into other aspects that were really, really relevant to that story.
Was that quite hard to let go? Because I'm thinking you probably invested in that visual.
I loved that arc diagram, and they are not the easiest thing in the world to make. I had like a template I was using and putting it all together, and like I had spacers. I spent maybe a day figuring out how to make that all work. And it was just beautiful, and I had to let go of it. And yeah, it was hard, but I think the story in the end became a lot more cohesive for being able to kind of put some of those distractions aside.
You can deliver a part 2 in the future and
mean,
really
yeah.
let it shine at that point, because I think you're right. It is really important to edit things out. And I'm really surprised that it's only 9 months each way.
Yeah, if you catch the right window, it's pretty fast. I will edit myself here as well and not dive into the mechanics of that. Maybe we're going to have a whole viz coming of the orbital, the Hohmann transfer to get to Mars and how it works. But yeah, with our current space fuel, it's actually pretty fast, and in the future, it might be faster.
So I'm curious about your visualization, Anne, because there's a few different elements that I can see in here from a design perspective as well.
Mhm.
We know that the judging for the feeder competition is on design, analysis, and storytelling. So we've heard that you did an excellent job of editing yourself down on the storytelling. From a design perspective, there's a couple of unique elements that I'm seeing, and in particular in your typography hierarchy and what we're seeing there. Could you just step us through some of the decisions that you've made?
Yeah, I would love to talk about the design. And actually, it ties in kind of nicely because I had to do a lot of editing here too. My theme and sort of my mood board that I made for this viz had 2 big elements. And the first one was vintage NASA posters. NASA, like in the 70s and 80s, they were trying to promote space travel. And so they created all of these cool like travel destination posters, like go travel the stars, become an astronaut, work for us. And so elements like this big background up at the top here are very pulled directly from those posters. Very sort of vintage style, but that magic and wonder of space travel. But I had to hold myself back because I very much wanted to do the entire viz in that style. And I was leaning towards doing a dark mode viz, which I've done several times before. But as I was considering the accessibility piece of the design and just the overall like impact, I realized that that would lean into the area that becomes more distracting than helpful if I had this very big dramatic background everywhere. So I knew that I wanted to add elements that really synced nicely with that, but that weren't as dramatic, and keep kind of this big drama to just a couple little elements here, like that header and these section headings. So where I kind of went was thinking about that same sort of time frame, 60s, 70s, 80s, NASA reports. And I looked at a lot of like blueprints. I looked at a lot of original typewritten reports. I used some of those reports actually for data for my viz as well. I found some reports that were literally written in the 70s that had data that I was pulling for things like down here, the amount of food that astronauts ate, like the data from this Gemini mission came directly from a report about it. And I really use that concept of both typewriting. So I've got this Courier font here that's calling to mind that original typewritten font. And then also these hand-drawn blueprint elements that I used as, like, for example, section dividers here. I use these for labeling. And also in a lot of my visuals, I wanted to call that same effect. So like these form charts here are actually dual axis, where one version of the bubbles is just giving this very faint circle inside the other circle to make it look a little bit more hand-drawn. The other kind of choice here that again really comes down to editing. When I thought of using this Courier font, I was really excited and I wanted to use it everywhere. I wanted the whole thing to look like a blueprint and a report, and I was all about it. But again, I started thinking about that accessibility piece and the fact that Courier is lovely in small doses, but gets really hard to read when you have more than a line or two. And so I opted to pull myself back a little bit and use Montserrat, just kind of a more basic, clean, easy to read font for a lot of the heavier text sections, and then intersperse those Courier pieces just to add a little more visual interest, and then also to kind of separate some of these chart elements from the text descriptions.
Yeah, nice. I like the way you've balanced it there. Like you said, you haven't gone overboard using that font, but it also, like, just looking at this one in particular, it's almost as if that little section could have come out of the 60s.
100%. And even the little hand-drawn elements that you're talking about to really isolate each of the different visualizations. It's interesting, just before this call, we were just talking about, the best ways that we can isolate visualizations for a client as well. So I think this is just super artistic and beautiful, but not distracting. It's light enough that it's not, drawing too much attention, but the whole aesthetic around having this vintage feel, the visualizations, for instance, it does remind me of something that it kind of throws me back to my primary school days almost, of what might have been printed on old kind of paper and everything, really weird. But you've mentioned accessibility a couple of times, and it's great because I think Tableau have also introduced that into judging criteria for getting through the feeder, which is awesome. In the past, they would never talk about this is how we judge you, or this is, the kind of scoring that would go on. So you'd kind of be hitting and hoping and putting these things out here. Do you consider accessibility a lot in your day-to-day job using Tableau?
I really try to. I'm very much in the learning stage of this.
Mm-hmm.
I think you and I actually had a long debate about this or discussion, not a debate, about accessibility in one of my posts recently, which was great. I try to incorporate the best practices I know and to learn more. But things that are, pretty easy to do, like always using colorblind friendly palettes, using large enough font sizes, making sure there's enough contrast between the font and the background.
Yeah.
I use those a lot day to day. I recently learned about the alt text option for graphs. And so all of my visuals in this viz have alt text that is like describing, but then also the importance of using that to call out some of the insights that might only be visible in the chart. So folks using screen readers can still catch those insights. And that's something that I'm starting to incorporate more into my day-to-day as well. I'm lucky that right now I have my current position, I have a very targeted user audience. And so I know their needs pretty well. But when I'm designing for a broader audience, I try to amp up the level a little bit to make sure that I'm really hitting all of those boxes to try to get a broad array of people. And then just listening and learning and trying to understand more and how to do better.
Can we just pan down a little bit further, Anne, and take a look? Because I know you've been really conscious here about where you use color, and I think it's really beautiful. You're kind of shying away from it in the visuals itself, but you're just giving that pop of color every now and again in the headings to keep some interest around.
Yeah.
Can you talk through that decision?
Absolutely. I have been very into monochrome recently. It's kind of my thing at the moment of monochrome work. Because I think as I've evolved as a designer, I've begun to really see how color can be effective, but it can also be distracting if it's being used for pieces that aren't critical data. And so I've tried to be a lot more intentional, especially on this viz, about using color to highlight the really, really important stuff. So you see that in the section headings where I want some impact. You see that on a couple of these charts here, like these donut charts. This blue is still pretty mild. It's not monochrome, but it's pretty close to a gray. But then you also see that in some of the interactivity here, I'll show you on the bee swarm. So like I've got these clickable food names, and when I click one, we get just a little bit of color. It takes a second. And so this color here is being used to highlight the food that I selected. And so I've found recently, especially, that because I've been using color less, it makes the impact when I do use it much stronger. Whereas when there's color everywhere, sometimes the impact of something really important can get diluted.
So exciting. It's really elegant in design, and I'm so grateful for you coming on and sharing your wisdom with us and getting into the details behind your design, as well as the elegance that you have in the storytelling as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will pass over to our next one.
We have the infamous Kimley Scott here with us today. She is, believe it or not, 19 visitor days under her belt. She is an IronViz finalist from 2022, third-time visionary, and a well-known Tableau ambassador as well. Welcome, Kimley.
Thanks for having me, guys.
That's an amazing list to go through, and some outstanding achievements there. But I always look forward to seeing when you've got a new visualization that's come out, and I was super excited to see that once again you've put a submission in for IronViz. So thank you so much for coming on to the unDUBBED potty. I just want to start by noticing. Let me do it again. I just want to start by recognizing that you're so well known for your amazing design aesthetic. And when I read your submission story, I could really feel the connection, your connection to food. Can you start by sharing with us maybe your visualization and also where the design clicked for you? What was the moment it clicked for you when you were doing the development?
So I'll bring up my visualization. Well, when I first started looking at, when the IronViz announcement came out, I was on the fence as to whether I was going to enter or not. And in the end, I thought, stop it, I'm just going to enter. I had this really nice idea or this really nice story in mind, something that I'd kind of been mulling over for a while. Like I had this idea in my head, but I just couldn't get it off the ground because it's very data light. And if you see my visualization, I had to be creative with the data just to pad that out to have that analysis piece. So that's just kind of a little backstory on how this came about. But in terms of design, I just wanted to share how some of the elements came together. So you notice that in the visualization, I've got some images of ingredients, of food. And I think one thing that kind of stands out in the visualization, I'm just going to scroll down a bit, is the images of the dishes. And I guess this is the showcase of my visualization. I wanted to showcase, Cambodian food. A lot of people don't really know what it is and what it looks like. And, I wanted to kind of bring that to the surface and bring that up. And when I was putting this all together, I didn't know how I was going to depict the images of food. So I said to my dad, can you make me all this food? I want to take photos of it. So he, the lovely dad that he is, he went ahead and cooked me some Cambodian food so I could take photos. And I thought, these photos turned out really good. I'm going to kind of crop them and kind of stylize them a bit and put them into my visualization. And I did. And that was my first iteration. I had photos in there to show examples of what the food looked like. And then I showed my sister the viz, and she wasn't convinced. She's like, yeah, it looks good, but I think what you can try and do is draw some of these, because I know, you're really good at drawing. And I had already had some kind of these hand-drawn ingredients in there. And she said, you know, if you have a go at drawing the dishes, I think that would make the visualization look better. It would elevate it and it would take it up that next level. And I was a bit apprehensive because I'm like, oh, this is a big undertaking. Drawing these little ingredients, chilies, that's easy, but these dishes, they're so intricate. There's so many ingredients that go in the dishes, and I didn't want to kind of draw something that I know looks like, you know, noodle soup, but if someone else looks at it, they might not know it's noodle soup because they're not familiar with it. So she's like, just try it anyway. So I did, and the first thing I drew was the papaya salad, so the mocktail. And I sent it to her. I put it in my visualization and I sent like just a snippet of it to her. And she was like, this is so much better. This is amazing. It just really brought not just the food, but what it looks like, but the passion and my love of Cambodian food. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I've drawn one thing. I'm going to go and draw the other dishes. And I did. So I think, you know, that kind of design choice to keep it kind of sketchy, to keep it like a little bit rough around the edges kind of fits in with the whole aesthetic of the visualization, fits in with the color scheme. So you'll notice lots of greens. If you scroll through the images, there's lots of green dishes. So the numbajok, for instance, is like a green kind of curry soup. So that's kind of where the color palette and all of those kind of earthy type colors came in. Yeah, so that's the thinking and the choice behind using those kind of sketchy hand-drawn images. And I really like the way that it turned out. And I've gotten really good feedback from people in terms of the style of the dishes and the drawing. So yeah, I think I made a good choice, and it was some really good feedback from my sister to push me in that direction. So I'm glad I did it.
You totally nailed it. Like, and I love. Is this going to be the next version of the Flelage twins? We're going to have the Scott sisters coming together. You know, is she particularly artistic as well?
Oh, she's probably going to kill me, but she's not. She's not artistic.
She's like your muse. She can be your muse.
She's my biggest cheerleader, so she's always trying to push me and like get behind me and support me. But yeah, no, she's not very creative, and I show her these things that I've built in Tableau, and she's like, "That looks amazing," but I kind of really don't understand it. Like data and data visualization is not really her area, but she's really good at kind of writing, and she did give me lots of feedback in terms of the you know, my text, and she gave me lots of kind of suggestions on, oh, you should say it this way, or you should include this and exclude that. So yeah. Maybe we could do a collaboration in terms of her doing the text, and you know, I just build the pretty looking charts.
Could work well. Work well. Yeah, I love it. Like even just looking in this particular screen. So obviously the sketch is just gorgeous, and you are super talented. But then taking the elements down into the legend key there, and sort of sketching with that, and using the colors in there as well. You know, it really strings and draws everything together in such a perfect balance.
Yeah, well, with that trip down memory lane, my initial thought was to use map layers to build those elements around the dish, and I had drawn those and had them against the photograph. And so I think that's kind of what triggered her to tell me, oh, the kind of doesn't match. You've got those kind of these sketchy elements around it, and then you've got this photograph, and I think that's kind of what prompted her to say, well, maybe you should try drawing the dishes instead. And like I said, it turned out well, and I'm glad I did it.
And I love the fact that you also tricked your dad into cooking you lots of yummy food as well.
He does it anyway. That's what he loves to do. I'm always over there having dinner. I can't cook Cambodian food, which is a real shame because I love it so much. So every week we go over there and have Cambodian dinner. But when I called him up, I'm like, yeah, can you make this and this and this and this? He's like, sure, I can make it. So yeah, that was great.
What a treat. And something, Kimley, I've always noticed with your visual designs is just you're so good at balancing and giving that white space, and it never feels overcrowded or confusing or anything. So what's some of the tricks you do to keep that in balance?
I think it does take a bit to get used to, because you put it together and you see all this white space and you think, is that too much? Like, does it kind of feel like there's nothing there and people might get a bit bored? But it does take a bit of practice. And for me, I guess my trick is to like add more space than you think you will need. From a design perspective, I think it helps to break things up. And, I start with a big canvas because I know I'm going to have that, all that white space in there. And what I do is when I'm building the dashboard, I put the grid lines in. So when I'm building kind of these IronViz type dashboards, it's all floating. So everything in there is all floating. I don't want to start any kind of any fights here. I just feel like it's easy for me to kind of move things around. Oh, it doesn't look good there. I'm going to move it over here. But I use the grid lines, and I use that to kind of help me pad out the elements. So if I've got the heading in there, I might say, oh, I'm going to put 10 rows on the grid line, and then I'm going to put something else. And then I'll use that as a measure like throughout the rest of the visualization. So it would be like in between each text and each heading, I'm going to have 5 rows. In between the image and the text, I'm going to have, a certain number of rows. And on the sides, it's going to, I want it in the middle. So I think it was like 10 or 16 rows on each side. So using that kind of those grids to kind of help lay it out. And what I also find that's really helpful is when downloading or exporting the visualization as you go. So you can see what it looks like, in one screen. Like, one thing I don't like about Tableau is that you can't zoom in and out when you're designing. So I like to kind of, export the image, zoom out, see what it looks like. Oh, there's not much room in between, this heading and this title. I'm going to go in and make it a bit bigger. Or, oh, there's way too much room here. I'm just going to shrink it. So, having that kind of bird's eye view allows you to take in the elements and see what doesn't fit and what fits.
Yeah, nice. Some great tips there on using the grid. Not sure about using floating all the time. I'm guessing for something like this, I'll say it's okay.
Floating for fun.
Yeah, floating for fun.
I like that. I wouldn't dare use floating like in my business dashboards at work, but certainly for something like this, like I don't even know how I could tile this particular visualization.
Lots of padding tricks. I'm curious around the sketches a little bit more. So I know we haven't gone too much into the story yet, but the sketches are just so beautiful. What tool are you using to sketch?
You're gonna laugh when I tell you. It's just drawing on my trackpad. So I just open up Figma and I'll have a picture to kind of to help, to have as reference, and I just use my trackpad to draw with my finger. Like,
oh wow,
I don't have like an Apple Pencil. My daughter stole my iPad years ago, along with the Apple Pencil. So I've just started to learn how to use a trackpad. It does take a while to get used to, but like I can draw like lines and the colors and the shading, and I think Figma is really nice because that the drawing icon or the drawing tool allows me to kind of, if I draw something and the outline is too dark or too thick, I can scale it down. So you can kind of edit as you go. If I've kind of drawn something a bit wonky, I can go in and like straighten it. So it just makes it easy for you to kind of fix up some mistakes that you've made along the way. So yeah, Figma and my trackpad.
Wow.
My gosh, I couldn't imagine doing it like that, but it's even more amazing.
Impressive.
Lo-fi. I think I have tried using like the Apple Pen on the iPad, but I felt like there's a bit of a delay in like when you press down and draw to when it comes up on the screen, and that really put me off. Like I'm just it wasn't, I couldn't get used to that. So that's I stopped using the pencil.
Yeah, well, they're very, very beautiful. I do want to step into the storytelling a little bit, because we all know that in IronViz it's really important to cover the three different areas:
Mm-hmm.
design, analysis, and storytelling. And just looking at this top part here, where you start to link into the neurobiology and, really about that emotional connection that we get with food, both from a taste perspective and a smell as well.
Yep.
When you were approaching this idea, like, what's the process to think about how you're bringing the story together and stringing each of those elements, which is then going to translate into visual aspects?
That's a good question, and I don't know how I'm going to answer that.
It's a toughie. Like, do you start with, I wanted to talk about, food that's important to me and that I have a connection with, how am I going to frame this, and then went into this? Or did you start with, there's a really interesting aspect to food and the brain?
I started with that aspect. So I started off with the link between food and memory, and that's what I started researching when I first thought of this topic. And I found a couple of kind of articles that talked about it, and there were like one or two studies, but it was all kind of like psychological, and it was hard for people to measure because it was like having interviews with people and asking them, what sort of foods take you back to your childhood? What are the types of feelings that you feel when you eat a certain food or when you smell a certain smell? And so the data was really, really light on. And I found it hard to come up with a full story just around that link. And then I thought back to my own life and the foods that I used to eat, and then all of the memories that come back to you when you eat those foods. And I thought, well, that's something that I can use to pad the story and bring in that whole kind of culture link as well, because food is very cultural. Cambodian food is very cultural as well. It's a type of food that we all kind of sit down and share a meal together. When I married my husband, like when we got together, he's Australian, and so they all have their own like separate plates. And to me, that was really, really weird, because when I used to eat with my family, we'd have our bowl of rice, but we would share soups and stews, and we would sit down and eat together. And yeah, having the individual plates was just really foreign to me. And so I thought bringing in that culture element, showcasing the food that I love, will bring in that humanistic side of it as well, bring in my story, make it a bit more personal. And then I had this idea of like, well, what if I asked other people? It's such a phenomenon that exists, and you talk to people, and when they start to think about it, they're like, oh, well, I used to do this, or I used to eat this with my grandma or whatever. And then when you have it now as an adult, you go back to that time when you were little, and when you were with that person. So it's really interesting, the people that gave me quotes here, that the food that they ate, it's tied to a person. So here in this example, Anne, sweet basil, that brings her back to her grandmother, and being with and spending time with her grandmother. So I think that that whole kind of humanistic side, and having that those human stories really kind of adds weight to the storytelling. So yeah, that's kind of how I approached it, and my thinking as I went through the research and the data collection, and putting the story together. I had a bit of trouble the flow of the story. Like, I had different things in different sections, but then I ultimately settled on this storybook type storytelling, where you've got your prologue, talking about that link, setting the scene, like this is something that is common, and it is something that happens in our brain, and then having the different chapters underneath it. Yeah, so that's how that came about.
Yeah, really lovely. And I do really love the flow and the way kind of you go down it, and also having that personal touch as well is something that we don't always see in these visualizations. So I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, and I think like it's I just feel like you know yourself the best, and so like putting yourself into the visualizations, like you know that's what's the word, like it's that insight that you have on yourself that you kind of want to share, and like you know you don't need to go looking for a lot of research, like that story is there.
Yeah, it's like it's natural, right? It comes from within, and that
Exactly,
self-reflection.
exactly. That is a much better way to put it.
When you were talking about, you know, Anne's grandmother and the sweet basil, immediately I was thrown to my grandmother and what she used to cook, and she was quite heavy-handed with the salt. And so occasionally when I need to feel that comfort sort of food, I'll have something that's a little bit saltier, and it will remind me of that, of sort of being wrapped up in Granny's arms and, you know, feeling really good.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's really sweet. And I think like there's just like that trigger is so strong. Even like smells and sounds, not just the taste, like it really takes you back.
Yeah, for sure. Well, some great memories there. And thank you so much for joining us today on unDUBBED. We've really learnt a lot, and it's been really wonderful to see you come back into the IronViz space. So we'll be looking on with eagle eyes to see how this progresses. Congratulations. It's an amazing submission, and it really does hit you right to the core with a few of those emotions. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you so much.
amazing, Kimley. Thank you for sharing that with us today.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Wow, what a start. I loved hearing the why behind these entries, not just the data or the design, but the passion and purpose driving them.
Yeah. And that courage it takes to actually hit submit, knowing that you're putting your creativity out there for the world to see, that's brave.
Totally. And the good news, we're just getting started. Part 2 dives even deeper into the craft, storytelling, and the lessons learned along the way.
So you know the drill. Make sure you've followed unDUBBED, give us a like or a rating, and share this with anyone thinking about entering IronViz or just doing a great data visualization.
Because you never know, it might just be the nudge they need.